Welcome to the R7 podcast, sponsored by M is Good. R7 is an innovative, God-inspiring process that explores personal and professional purpose. R7 analyzes 7 strategies to transform your vision and find direction in your organizational marketing. R7 establishes clarity and guidance for the gift we call life. This is my destiny. Welcome to the R7 podcast. Today I have a very special guest with me. We really have grown up in the ministry together in the marketing and branding side of things. And I've got my awesome sidekick, David Bennett, with us. Gonna bring them in now. What up, men of God?
What's up, my friend?
Hello.
So,
Dave
yeah, go
Jones,
ahead.
I just gotta say, as we get going, and I've got some allergy thing going on today. Like, I am impressed that you are so well rounded, that you were able to bring to the podcast today somebody that is a big deal in YouTube Nation. I don't know how you have these connections.
Well, if it wasn't for God, I definitely would not have these connections. So that's for sure.
That's right, man. That's right.
So I know in past podcasts, we've talked about destiny, vision, strategy, brand, communication, praying, action. And today's kind of just a really cool opportunity for me. And I think the people that watch the podcast to hear from a legend in the space. You've been at it for 16 years, Brian?
Yeah, I uploaded first video to YouTube. It wasn't owned by Google at the time, even in 2008. In February, almost exactly.
That's awesome. And so I just think that other men and women of God that have a vision out there that want to start something, I think it's really cool to hear from the founder of Worship Tutorials. And, tell us the story, man. How did you get started? What is the story?
So I always was interested in worship, leading worship, being involved. I did that as a high school student at my church growing up. When I got out of college and got into a career, I started, helping with churches and things like that. I didn't do worship ministry as a career initially, but I always remembered trying to remember learning how to play all these songs when I was young, when I was a kid. And I would go to the guys in the college ministry who led worship, and I would can I borrow your huge binder full of worship songs? And I just remember thinking it was not easy or accessible to learn how to play these songs. And as I started serving on worship teams, it became clear to me that there were not very many good resources back then. There are some great ones now, but back then there were not many good resources to help resource church musicians. YouTube was young at the time, and I got very lucky that I started creating content that long ago, because it's a much different game now than it used to be. And there was one other person, I think, making these videos. And so I thought, well, I'm going to make some videos of me teaching how to play these songs. I also had it in mind too. I like to tell this story. I thought I was going to try and build a platform based on my own performing of these songs as a musician. And I was quickly realized that I was going to go a lot further equipping people, teaching them how to, rather than having people come watch me sing a song. So I always, and it taught me there's a lot more, not that there isn't value in performing a song, but there's a lot more value in training and equipping somebody to do something rather than trying to entertain them with something at least for me. You got to be really good to make it if you're going to try and do it on your own talent, entertaining people. So, yeah. I started teaching how to play these songs. I began working in ministry full time, first as a student pastor and then in worship leadership. All along the way, kept uploading content consistently, year over year over year, and eventually it grew to a point where there was a group of, rather an audience of people, and I started making some digital products that I was using in my church, because I was at a couple very small churches, no resources. And so I started making pads, is what I call them. Ambient. It's like an ambient keyboard base that you could play a song on top of, because we didn't have many keys players and just wanted to make it sound better. And I'm looking at YouTube, seeing like there's all these people watching these videos. They need help too. I should sell them these pads. And so I did that. That was shortly after I started working at New Hope. Is when I put those for sale for the first time.
Oh yeah.
And it became a full-time income pretty soon after that. And so I started writing on the wall, like this could be a career for me. And so I just kind of was pretty conservative about my timing. And eventually I was able to leave my full-time role at church to be, create content full-time and create resources for churches and church musicians. Yeah. It was it was over a long period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back after 16 years, what do you think it's made it successful?
Well, a couple things. So when it comes, I have a lot of people ask like, well, how do you make it as a YouTuber? And my go-to answer is, 3 to 5 videos a week, every week for about 10 years. You do that in your spare time and you'll make it.
Nice.
Which is fun to say, because people are like, oh, so okay, how do you go viral? I don't know how you do that, but the one thing was just get lucky. One thing was consistency over time and just building trust with an audience of people, and being a place where people knew that they could go to get resources that they needed. Dave, we started how long ago did we start working together?
Yeah. I was talking. Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
For M is good.
Talking about.
I've worked with both Daves, probably about the same time, actually.
Yeah, I think because we all met at New Hope.
We did.
We all met at the church, and I think it was shortly after you started there. So it's been at least 10 years for M is
10
good.
years ago. Yeah. Yeah. And I always remember, because my son, I started working at New Hope right as my son was born, and he's 10. So I can always date it. How long ago did I start at New Hope? That however old Seth is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you and I started working together on staff there the fall of 2013.
Yeah.
And yes, Brian, I have many memories of pads and C, please, pads and C.
Oh, yeah. we used to do it all the time.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But when you think about that journey, did you ever run into a point where you're like, man, is it worth it? Or I gotta make another video? Or
yeah. I've often tried to, because I do it. It's like my full-time job now. And like in the beginning, I had a laptop with a camera, facing me, a front-facing camera, and I just sat in front of it and played. And I was always into like audio recording, so I got that part. That part was much more pro than the video side. But so it was a real simple deal for me in the beginning to make the content. But it was like, if you go back and look at YouTube analytics, just views and subscribers, it goes like the line doesn't go up for a very long time, and then it starts doing this, or I guess it's this way, depending on how you're looking. So I'm thinking, and I think back on like, when did I make it had to have been nights and weekends, because I was working full-time jobs, and then I was helping. A lot of times it was a full-time job with like a part-time thing at a church, and then I did this so it was, you talk about like a side hustle, and it was like that. It was a side hustle that really didn't, I wasn't making money with it either. It wasn't a financial thing. It was more of I have a heart for the church, and I want to help equip people. And I was getting a lot of good, feedback from people who had watched the content. But it was just a grind for a very long time. And it only, I did it from like the first 5 years. I had no intention of like, this was going to be a career it was just a hobby that I was very consistently pouring into. And then it was, once it kind of put that first set of pads out and put them for sale, I'm like, oh, people are going to buy this stuff. I distinctly remember the first sale through the website. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, this is, And it was kind of that moment showed me like that this is going to be what I do one day, you know?
I think it's a really super awesome and powerful point because, I work with 35 to 40 different Christian brands per week from around the globe. And some are starting, some are big, some are small. And, my ops manager, Alvin, and I talk about like, you got to commit to this process for at least 3 years before you even
Yeah.
begin to think about if it's going to work or not. And so we have people just change. And it's just, and I think it's a really valuable point that what you're saying is you just did it for 5 years just for the fun of it
Yeah.
before it even began to think about making a profit. And that's a hard, I don't know, pill to swallow, a hard thought process to go, okay, I'm committing okay, Lord, you give me this vision. I'm committing my life for the next 5 years to this, and I'm not going to look up.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm going to mortgage my house. Thank God you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to sacrifice my family in some ways. Like I'm going to, working nights and weekends. It means you're not around your wife.
Yeah.
If you are, you're distracted,
Right.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that. Talk to us about the sacrifice when you didn't even, now looking back, you probably don't even feel like you made the sacrifice because you were just
I
grinding.
don't. It's hard for me to remember. It's funny because I see the video, like I'll go back and watch some of those old videos just to like, wow, I've come a long way. And it's hard to remember making them. Like I remember the spaces I made them in because I remember each house I lived in had a room and I would paint it a certain color because it was like the brand color, right? And even we had like this temporary house where we lived for a few months while we built a house in Chapel Hill at one point. And we had to live in a place for 3 months, and I painted a wall in this random person's house, this color blue, just so I could film against it, And then there was another the house before that. It was like this. I just have these memories because it was a spare bedroom, and you could see like the little outline of where the video would be, the 16:9 frame, but like literally right next to it's a bed, and then there's like a office stuff over here, and so I remember just like kind of taking these spaces and making them work, and I can remember I used this camera for these years, and this camera, it was always like I was trying to slowly upgrade, but it's hard. I don't really even remember. One thing I do remember, and I still do, is like the shooting the content is one thing, but editing it is a whole other, that's a longer process even. And I my wife is a morning person and I am a night person. So she would go to bed and I would be up late. Like I'd start at 11 and I'd edit till 2 a.m. like every day, and then I'd just wake up tired. I'd come to church so tired because I'm up editing videos, so I do remember that. And so it was like I had to carve out time, that, and I had to, and sacrifice in a way. I mean, I don't know that I would go to sleep anyway, but that's what I would spend my time doing.
Did you feel like it was a sacrifice?
No, I mean, I really did enjoy it.
Yeah.
There was a lot where it would feel like a grind making it, but then you upload. One thing about YouTube and social media now, and it was true then, there's the instant gratification aspect of it. So you upload something and you get an immediate rush of comments or people thanking, thank you. I use this on Sunday or that kind of thing. And that always was very inspiring to me. So I really did enjoy the process of it a lot. And I still do. I mean, I've uploaded 2,000 plus videos and I still enjoy making videos, So, yeah.
So in that story, in your journey there, at what point does it transition from this is really cool to you actually birth a vision, have a dream, build a strategy, and really kind of get serious about it?
This is what Dave Jones and I worked on together a lot. And it really boiled down to, it happened, the transition happened when I sort of made this realization. It began when I made this realization, like, I'm going to build a platform based on equipping people rather than trying to like because I would write songs too and try and, I had, and I thought maybe I'll get a band together and record worship music. And I quickly realized I have a much more potential to build a platform equipping people than doing that. And I feel like I'm just better at the equipping thing too.
And
So,
it probably was very when you made that decision, it was probably hard to let go of that piece of your life,
yeah,
right?
a
But
little, I
also
mean,
but also inspiring to go, all right, I'm going to dig in
yeah,
on this side, right?
yeah, true. And luckily for me, if I want to write a song and perform a song, I can, and I have a platform that I can put it on and
Hmm.
people enjoy it. So I was lucky in the fact that like I could kind of do both if I wanted to. But I made an internal switch, like I'm going to focus on this thing and not this. And when I did that, Dave Jones, you helped me really put like language around it. And I
Hmm.
came up with two words that everything I would do with worship tutorials, and worship tutorials is more than just me at this point,
Right.
now everything we do is filtered through these two words. And one is excellence and the other is authenticity. And those two things are to me very important when it comes to like a worship leader, but really anything that you do, um, because you can do that with no budget. You can do it if
Hmm.
with no other people around you. If it's if you're in a small setting with no money, it's just you, and you've got a guitar or a piano, and you're going to sing a song, or whatever it is that you're doing. Uh, you really should do it to the absolute best that you can do, and you should do it with as much authenticity as possible. And so everything we made sort of was filtered through those two words. That became the vision of worship tutorials, that every church in the world would have worship experiences that are excellent and authentic. And that's shifted a little bit these days, but that's where it was in the beginning. Yeah.
I'm so proud of that work that we did together because,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily you saying words, but it's really a culture that you've created,
Yeah.
right? It's an environment,
I
it's the
hope so.
messaging, it's the expectation that you've built.
Yeah.
And to me, it's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be too. It's like I didn't want people to think that I was going to ask them for we existed to give you resources to help you do that. And they were on YouTube. They were free. There were
Mhm.
things that you could go purchase if you wanted to, but it's not like it was a bait and switch, or anything like that. It was genuinely, I'm in your corner. I'm here to help you, become the best that you can be at specifically worship leaders, guitar players in churches, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think when I look back and I look at my digital marketing career here at M is
Mhm.
Good, I think about how you really I don't know if you solidified, but you really helped me understand what a lead magnet was and how it
Hmm.
could work effectively.
Really
Because
interesting.
because I think that was just it was kind of a beginning phase of that
Hmm.
during when you started that and you were very successful at giving
Hmm.
away your music,
Yeah,
and your
we
team.
give. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We make something premium for free, and you can get that for free. And then if you like it, well, there's a whole lot more you
There's a
can
whole
come
lot
get.
more.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that was right around Google was doing free, 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 and, like, that whole world was
Hmm.
shifting, and you were really the first client that really didn't just talk it, but was already
Hmm.
had some momentum doing it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that was very powerful for me to watch and see. What do
yeah.
you think is your biggest struggle that you had to overcome? And before you answer that, I think about the S curve.
Uh huh.
Businesses that or organizations been around for a while, they have like a beginning of that bottom part. We go, okay,
Yeah,
I'm going to start this. I'm excited. And there's all this crazy innovation happening. And then they
yeah,
sort of plateau up here. And then they have to go
yeah,
reinvent themselves to get that part of the
yeah.
S. And like McDonald's is one example, I think, in the business books that has had multiple S's.
Hmm.
They're a huge success story in American business.
Yeah.
So they've reinvented, they've created, and they've plateaued and they've reinvented. And so
That's
I was going to
true.
ask you where have you think your biggest struggle is, and how have you been able to overcome and adapt to that?
Yeah. One thing thinking back was I started and Brian Fuller was a big part of this. Fuller, one of my best friends of all time. Um he and I made all the pads together, the pad sets. And
Mhm.
he's a very gifted production, producer, music producer. And it became clear to us along the way that like uh that we weren't it wasn't going to carry us forever, right? There had to be something else, because we'd make these pads. I think we made like 10 sets of pads, and they all kind of sound the same. And then there's a lot more people. When I made the first set, there was only one person selling pads. Theirs were $40 and I made mine 10. So I was trying to make it like easy decision which one you want to buy. But now you can get pads from like 100 plus, they're
Wow.
everywhere. There's a lot
Wow.
more competition in that space, and we still sell pads. But it kind of became clear, and Fuller and I had a lot of conversations about this too, like what are we gonna do next? And so we had to pivot, and we started, and that's about the time Bradford Mitchell is another, he's part of Worship Tutorials. He's in a lot of the content with me, sort of a partner with me at this point. um and we started making more resources for guitar players, like presets and things like that.
Mhm.
And it kind of became clear to me like there was a lot more potential in the guitar things than there were in the pads. And so that was a hard, I'm constantly thinking like, okay, well, one day, because when I don't want to get into the details of like digital guitar effects units, but like they're kind of a thing that exists now, that they're not always going to be what they are. We live in a very unique time in the history of guitar things where like you can monetize a digital preset and sell it. I don't know if that's going to be a thing forever. And so I'm thinking, how do we capitalize on that? And then what's the next thing? Because there's got to be a next thing. But
Mhm.
as you're talking, you got to reinvent it, um, and then how can we take the presets that we make and create maybe a better experience around them, than just downloading a file and putting it on your thing, right? So a lot of that has to do with the content that we make around it, things like that. And so, yeah, that's been, one of that transition was not an easy thing, and it took a long time. And there's a lot of fear around that too, like, kind of, what if it doesn't work? What if this thing dies and the other thing doesn't work? Then what? you know? Uh, and so, another really difficult thing was actually moving here,
Mm.
Bradford and I as partners, and Nick and Fuller, we all sort of lived together and we could make content together, and now we're separate. So we're kind of working through how do we make things and keep creating content and product together separately. So yeah, that's been a challenge, but it's a
I
good
think
challenge.
about this is my 23rd year,
Hmm.
and I think we were originally a traditional media buying agency,
Yeah.
and then we went to digital. But in that, so I look at that as that S curve, right? I had to
Yeah.
pivot to digital. That was scary. I didn't even know what digital was.
Oh man, I believe it.
And
Yeah.
then from that to strategy, like being a strategist, that was definitely a pivot. I think
Hmm.
the obvious pivot that's coming now, that's gonna be interesting to see who embraces it and who shouldn't embrace it and who should, is AI.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their eyes on the shiny object of AI.
Yeah.
How am I gonna be able to, 1, use it, and 2, make money
Yeah.
from it? Um,
Yeah. It's a
yeah.
big thing. AI is a big thing in music too. I mean, there's a lot of fear that AI
Mm.
AI based music is going to replace like music created by human beings. But it'd be an interesting one to watch. Yeah.
And will
Well,
we
I
know the
think,
difference? That's good, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to say, and tell me if I'm wrong, Brian, but from an AI standpoint, you're talking about the fact that you could create an AI version of your voice and they could sing the whole song by itself and you never even have to be there to do it.
Yeah. Or like, you can write, I don't know a lot about that space, but like the idea that a hit song could be written by some AI machine, and it's not even written by a person anymore. It just listens to everything Taylor Swift has ever done and spits out something like it, or something like that. So, yeah.
And the crazy thing is we'll probably never know the difference. We'd never know the difference the way it's going now.
It's a very interesting topic. Yeah.
I can tell you right now that we're really invested into the AI and its awesomeness, and it is really changing every week. It gets even better and better.
Wow.
Midjourney is one of the popular one, and it's creating people now where before you have to get a Getty image and pay for the rights for it. Now you don't even need the permission anymore because Midjourney is going to create the image for you. And
like stock imagery.
Imagery, yeah.
Yeah. It's being done with video too.
Yeah.
Stock video. Yeah. That's kind of crazy.
It is kind of crazy. Sure. But I just really want to speak to, Brian, like the men and women of God that are out there right now that got a vision from the Lord to start something.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Yeah. I often say I truly believe that worship tutorials it's a divine thing to me. Like I don't consider myself like some exceptional musician or an exceptional videographer, content creator, these kinds of things. Like I feel like I have no business running a YouTube channel or a website like Worship Tutorials. And I truly believe, had it not been, I believe it was that I was following the leading of the Holy Spirit, God's calling in my life to do this, to resource, because I'm just I am very passionate about the local church. And, whether I'm on staff at a church or not, that's one of the most important things in my life is to be involved in the church and to help in literally any way that I can, given my skill set and talents and resources and things like that. And so I would say, had it not been for the leading of the Holy Spirit in my life, I would not have, worship tutorials wouldn't be a thing. And, it's been successful and it's allowed me to it's provided an income for me. But I think, and I hope that looking back, I would like to think that had it not done any of those things, I would still do it. Like I would have still done, and I did for the first 5 years of it. Like it didn't really make any money or, and I didn't really, it wasn't a thing that was that, I still wanted to do it. And so I would say, there's whatever. I was in church Sunday and there was the pastor, said that one of my all-time favorite verses, I can't remember verbatim. I don't have it memorized, but it's the one, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. Right. In all your ways, submit yourself to God, which I believe is there's a lot of talk about what is worship. And we think it's singing songs on Sunday, but really what worship is sacrificing yourself and giving yourself to the Lord. And that is an act of worship. That is truly the act of worship. And if you do that, the promise that God gives us scripturally, and we see it manifested throughout all kinds of people in the Bible and stories of people that we know, is that God has a plan for us to prosper us, and he will direct our paths. And that might be financial. It might include like a career that provides for you, but it might not. And, and that's okay, but it's still, we're called to follow God's leading in our lives. And I find it, I constantly struggle with, cause right now we can make a video about the latest guitar. We uploaded one today about the latest processing unit that one of these companies made, and it gets way more views than the rest of our content on the channel. And so there's this real desire, like, well, should we just kind of just make all guitar gear content and kind of not focus on the, we made a video about tithing and how important we think tithing is. And that video didn't get nearly as many views, but it's something that's important to us, right? To make that content. So there's kind of this constant struggle, like, and I have to remind myself to, what is it that God wants of me? How do I take this thing that I've been given, this platform I've been given? How do I honor God with it? What kind of videos do I make to honor God with this, with worship tutorials? What kind of products do I create? So, I would just encourage, if you're listening or watching, I would encourage people, like, to constantly submit yourself to the Lord and ask those questions. What have you, Lord, what have you given me, and how can I steward it in a way that glorifies you and brings people to faith in the name of Jesus? Because that's ultimately, I believe, why we're here on this earth, what our ultimate goal is, with the things God gives us.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking about the kind of the wisdom that's on this call right now. Like, I look at the executive side with Dave Bennett in terms of, like, how many years of executive leadership he's had in the church. And then I think about the marketing side, and I think about the worship side. Like, let me ask you, Dave Bennett, how do you feel like the church is doing coming out of COVID? Is it growing? Is it dying? Is it something like, what's the biggest branding and marketing, or messaging that the church needs to do? What do you think?
It's interesting. COVID was definitely, I think, for many churches, a step back. I talked to a pastor, ironically, in Raleigh a couple of weeks ago about this exact thing. And, I don't know that too many made it out the way they wanted to, but what it has done is it has created an even greater hunger for connection. It's created a greater hunger for an appreciation for community. And I think the churches that, and don't kill me, everybody, for saying this, but the churches that are killing it are the ones that have figured out how to harness that community and make it available to people. Because, there's more than just a small group or life group. There's more than that. There are certain things that you can do where people feel connected to a vision and a direction and what's happening in that church. And so if you ignore that desire for community, I think you're ignoring an opportunity that God is allowing us to have because of COVID, to be able to be unique and be different. And I'm not saying go door to door or anything like that, but what I'm saying is be creative about how you're establishing community in your church. Be willing to push some boundaries. Don't just say, well, what is X church doing? What is Y church doing? Think about who you are, the vision God has for your church that he's put on your heart, and then begin asking your leadership team, hey, how can we be different? What does our community need that's different? Not what is the cookie cutter thing that I thought was different, but what does our community actually need, and how do we get there? I think that's a big deal right now.
Ryan, from a worship perspective, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, we often say in content, we used to do this, we need to pick it back up, this live video series every once a month on Worship Leader Wednesday live. We tell people that I believe that people want to be a part of something significant that is, and for many people like that serve on a worship team, or you're involved in church, maybe you're worship leader, staff, volunteer. This is the group of people that can be together in community doing something significant. And they want to be a part of, they want to change the world, I believe, especially young people. The more young people I know, like, they want to be part of something that has impact, that, and I believe the Bible says the church is the hope of the world, and I believe that to be true. Uh, that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it. And but the way one of the ways that the church is to be the hope of the world is for people to be, in community, in it together, doing things that are significant. I think there's so much potential in our churches to do so much good that we're just not, we're not doing. And so when it comes to worship, I think, I think there should be more, people think of worship as a 20-minute set of 3 songs before a message, but it's so much more than that, so it should be. And I lose sight of that all the time, so, but I agree. I think, especially David, as you're saying, after COVID, people just, so many people went through so many difficult times and are still going through difficult times, whether it's health or finances, or, we need each other. We need community, and churches need to, to rather than talk about how they're, the hope of the world, just be it. Whatever that looks like a lot of different things, I think, for a lot of different places. But yeah.
And to your point, Brian, I mean, worship isn't just a warm up for the message. It's its own entity. It's its own part of what happens, and you do such a good job of encouraging people to try things that are different. Do worship in a round and totally blow everybody's mind and try something different.
Yeah.
Or like, have a night of worship, but incorporate some community components to it, to where, it's not just everybody shows up and they sing and they go home. Like, try different things, because that's what people are really, really looking for, is something to, one of the things I love about worship tutorials, and it's funny when you said this a few minutes ago, because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, is authenticity. People value that in culture, and they value that in relationships. And how do you establish that in those spaces in your church? Authenticity. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I have to encourage people to, it's scary when you're on a platform to be yourself. It's a lot easier to, I haven't preached much. I have this much, but, David, you preached every once in a while at New Hope, didn't you? David Bennett?
Yeah, that was that. I was gonna say, I think that was more staff type teaching, but it wasn't.
Okay, that could be.
It wasn't on Sunday morning.
Yeah, but it's so easy to find, watch a service online from Elevation or Hillsong or Passion, and just sort of emulate what that worship leader does, and say the same kinds of things and do the same, and it's a lot harder to get up there. And this is one thing that Fuller taught me so well, just watching him, was like, he shared a lot of himself from the platform, he was so good at that, in a way that wasn't weird. You don't want to get weird about it, but like, you have to be vulnerable in those situations. I don't know how we got started. I don't know why I went down this road, but
we're really going to go down this rabbit trail. It makes you want to tell a story then.
Yeah. What's that?
Okay, so all right. So I think, Brian, you were still on staff. So Dave, you don't know the story, but it's fantastic. So one day I'm walking across campus, and I don't know what's going on in our worship center. So I open the door, and it's dark in there. And Brian and Fuller, if he's watching, he'll remember this quite well, because I mentioned it to Dave Bookout recently, and he laughed too. Everybody is sitting in that worship center, and it's dark, and they're all watching a John Mayer live concert. And
I remember that well.
Oh yeah, and I sit down next to Fuller and I go, "Hey, what are we doing?" And he's like, "Everyone's learning how to do transitions from John Mayer." And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
I like it." And I laughed because I had to get to a meeting as usual. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
It was either that or like in The Office when they're watching Varsity Blues and Jan comes in. I don't know if you guys are fans of The Office.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
How does movie night increase productivity, Michael?
Exactly.
Yeah, it was like, let's experience what excellence is like from John Mayer.
Yeah,
pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, we can use anything to be able to, be creative and try different things, and that's part of the point.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I got two questions, and then we'll land a plane here. So these two questions, Brian, come from office questions that I asked in preparation for this. So the
Okay.
first question is, what inspires you after 16 years of doing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I watch a lot of YouTube. And so I do, that's a joke, but it's true. I mean, I do watch I am inspired by a lot of content that I see, like because I don't watch, I make videos about worship and gear and guitar. I watch content about other things, a lot.
Mhm.
And I'll see somebody do something like really, and it's always around story. It's like great content involves a compelling story. And I'll see that, and I'll see something, I'll be like, oh, you know what, I think I can take this video about this pedal that I want to make, and I can make it more creative, or I can so that's one thing. Another thing that inspires me a lot, I've it was interesting. I started traveling a lot more pre-COVID. I would be invited to come be a part of a conference, or a company would invite us to come out and make some content with them. But I would be able to for the longest time, it felt like I was just in a spare bedroom, whether it was Bradford and I, or Nick and I, or Fuller and I together, and it was just us and a video camera. And so it's like the only person who's really watching this is this camera that I'm looking at, right?
Right.
And you can interact with comments, but like I would go to a worship conference, and like I would meet a lot of people who would come up and just tell me about. I love it because I did this like free guitar course, like how to play acoustic guitar from a beginner, and I made it free, and lots and lots of people have gone through it, and
And you
I'll
made
see
it like 15 years ago or something, right?
yeah,
Like
man,
it's
a
still
long
going
time
strong.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
It still gets a lot of people signing up.
Yeah.
And then they get emails from me. So anyway, I'll meet people and like, you taught me how to play guitar, or, I wanted to be on my worship team and I didn't know what to do, and you gave me all the tools that I needed. Now I'm playing guitar, singing on the team, or, you did this video and it really helped. And so to like put faces to like, real human beings, that are engaging with the content that we make, and enjoying it, using it, and their lives are being benefited from it. That's very, very inspiring for me. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then the last question, I don't know if Dave, you got a question, but the last question I have for you, Brian, it's a big one. Okay. And I think where this question is going to come from when I ask it. All right.
Okay.
Why do Christian hackers love you so much?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Alvin
Why do
asked-
Chinese hackers love you so much?
Oh my
Alvin
gosh.
asked
Why
this
do
question.
Chinese hackers love you so much?
No.
That's a great question. I think that because it's like somewhere someone got a taste that somebody built this e-commerce website and he didn't know what he was doing. That would be me. Because I did it all and I didn't know how to do anything. So everything I did, I taught myself, right?
Oh my gosh.
And so I don't know. Did I get that?
From YouTube.
I want to know more. Did I get on some list where it's like Chinese underground?
For everybody
like,
else,
this site is vulnerable.
For everybody else here, MIG, M is good. We've been managing, Worship Tutorials website for a long time, and my ops manager Alvin is like always putting out fires for Brian because the site's good. Your site is huge.
I texted him about 24 hours ago. This doesn't work. What happened? And of course, Alvin's a rock star. He fixed it in like 10 minutes. It was fixed.
Nice.
Yeah. I should say that no credit card information or anything like that is
everybody's safe. Yeah. Everybody's safe.
Yeah. It's just like the site just crashes or something. Yeah. That is a great question. I wish I knew.
Go ahead, Dave. We lose you.
Oh, it looks like he froze.
Yeah. All right, man. My big takeaways today are, consistency over time, being able to pivot,
Yeah.
finding new ways to be creative, staying in your passion. These are all, things I think, a Christian organizational leader has to focus in on in order to survive these days. And,
Yeah.
you're certainly one of the OGs in the marketplace that would know what it means to pivot and what it means to create new copy and content. So, hey man, thanks for being on. It's been an awesome
Thank you so much.
podcast. I think there's a lot to glean from this. So
yeah, it's an honor to be here. Thank you. Appreciate it.
yeah.
And David, if he
just left us.
He's got connectivity issues. Yeah, I appreciate it. It was good to catch up with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, man. All right. We'll see you next week.
Okay.